Welcome. MB Mooney, Shield of the King author, among other books. Welcome to Sophia Talks podcast. I'm so happy to have you on my show. Thank you for coming.
No problem. We've been talking about this for a bit, and I'm glad to get on here, because we hardly ever talk, right? We hardly ever,
Yeah,
see each other or talk. No. So,
yeah.
no, you're an awesome writer, and I'm proud of you for your book coming out and happy to be on here.
Well, I'm super excited about my book. I am super excited about your book because I did get to read it. I somehow got an early copy. I got a copy before your book even launched somehow. So I was like, I
I
considered
know.
myself lucky.
That's crazy Amazon. So Amazon is in this place where like you can't really you can tell them when you want the book to launch, but it doesn't really work that way. I mean, it doesn't it'll be
Yeah.
available a week before, it is just so they don't. But yeah, so yeah, people were getting it the week before I officially launched, but that was kind of cool actually because then you could share those posts
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
hopefully people, when they were excited about it. So
Yeah.
congrats for reading it all the way through. It's
Oh, yeah. Are you kidding? This is here's you have it up on the screen, but here's my copy. It's a beautiful cover. I couldn't wait to get to that scene where there's this huge, humongous elephant with some kind of gemstone on his chest. I'm like, what is that about? Like, I was really anticipating that scene, and you did not disappoint at all.
Oh, good.
So,
I'm glad. That's one of the writing things, right? If you make promises, you have to keep them. You got to be careful what promises you make because you have to
mhm.
keep them.
Yes, absolutely, absolutely. Did you have a say in the cover, like the cover
I
design?
did. So since it's a smaller publisher, he was way more interactive with me about the cover. He asked me for a couple ideas, and I was like, we could go the whole sort of image and logo sort of cover that's really popular right now, or we could go a little more modern slash old school combination with like like a painting,
Mhm.
or I just different. We went different ways and looked at artists, and he wanted to do more of a painting, more of a like a
Okay.
graphic image. He wanted to do that, and I was like, I'm cool with that. So he asked me for suggestions of what it could be. And I was like, well, there's this one really epic moment in the book that really wouldn't be giving anything away, I don't
Yeah.
think, but
Uh-huh.
it would still be a very interesting. Anyway, so yeah, I did have
It,
some input.
it was definitely grabbing. It's definitely grabbing. Like you're so curious. Like, how did she get? What is that thing? And how did she get to fight him by her? Well, it looks like she's by herself. I'm not gonna say anything. But anyway,
Yeah.
um, well, again, congratulations on Shield of the King. It's absolutely fantastic. I have to know though, what was your inspiration in writing that book, especially a female protagonist? Like, what made you decide to do that?
Yeah, so Elowen is a character, although she's much older, in The Fire Reborn. So the third of my trilogy. So my original trilogy was Living Stone, The Blaze of War, The Fire Reborn, and Elowen was a character that I brought in and I had in my mind and I developed her. But because I already had this huge cast of characters in
Mhm.
my book, I didn't really have time to go into a lot of her background. And
Mm,
I'm sure most writers get this, right? You come up with a character as kind of a side character. I mean, they have purpose or they should be there. But then
mhm.
when you come up with this character, you start to fall in love with this character all
Yeah.
on your own. You're like, I don't know why, but I really, really love this character.
Mhm.
And of course, with doing that, your mind starts racing and you start coming up with the background and the history and where did she come from.
Mm,
And so at the same time, my original trilogy, while YA friendly, it's not so graphic or definitely not, like sexual stuff in there. So it's YA friendly, but it's written more for an adult audience. I wanted to get into YA a little
Mm,
bit. And so I was thinking, well, what if I told her origin story? What if I went
mm,
back, since I love her so much? And I also wanted to do something a little different than, while I have other cultures sort of represented in that original trilogy, it's still kind of that medieval
mhm,
sort of Western style fantasy. And I wanted to do a different culture, and I wanted to do first person.
mm,
And so because she shows up in a later book, I'm like, well, I could do first person because, you know, if you look into it, everybody's going to know she survives. So I can do first person. And so there's just a lot of elements to it that her story really kind of came together, where I could explore some different themes and different cultures instead of that sort of westernized mindset. And
mm.
then, and a different sort of female character. And I love strong female characters. I've been learning a lot more about why I love them. You know,
Mm,
in the sense of, there's this thing today about guys not. I don't think it's true guys don't like strong female characters. I mean, I
mm.
watched Aliens, back in the day in the movie theater. I'm old enough to have loved to see her, but I think that a strong female protagonist is a different. I think a lot of times what happens today is that people try to just make a strong female protagonist, but really they're really just the same as a male
Mm,
character. I don't know if that makes sense, but it's almost like they're just the same.
mm,
And I kind of wanted to look into that, like what makes a strong woman character, not just that she can beat everybody like like a
mm.
guy can, whatever, like some of those tropes. I wanted to sort of explore some of that in her character. And so I did, so there's a lot more about family, a lot more about community. And while she still kicks butt, she still kicks
Well,
butt, but she
I,
but there's a
yeah.
whole lot more. There's other themes in it besides just that she's really good.
Well, I love the conflict that you bring up throughout the book that she's an elf daughter and she can't, in her society, elf daughters are meant to breed and that's about it. Marry and breed. Like, and so she has to break those stereotypes and that's always a fantastic trope.
Yeah.
Like burst through those walls, break down those barriers, and let's see what happens. And she does that with style, let me tell you. And I love that her character is so vulnerable too. I mean, she's not entirely sure of herself. And
Mm,
so many of us can relate to that. I mean, I know as an author myself, I'm just starting out. I mean, I wrote my first book in 2014, but I didn't do much with it. And so I really became full-time author 2 years ago.
mm,
And it's not easy to start something like that. And I really related to Elowen because I'm kind of in that battle mode myself, where I'm
yeah.
trying to put books out there that people don't know anything about. They don't know anything about me, and they're
Mm,
not sure if they should trust spending the 3.99 to sit down with my book. And so I don't know, I just really related to Elowen, especially and I loved that you tackled the female character. I just absolutely love that. I mean, I'm sure guys will relate to her too, because I'm also reading A Living Stone, and but because it's not that female character, I just didn't like immediately relate to the main. But you have several characters going on in that, like at one time. You do have a female in there, a
yep.
widow, and well, we think she's a widow. I haven't gotten to the part where she knows yet. But, I mean, I immediately just connected with Elowen, so you just did a
Yeah, thank
fantastic
you.
job. You did a
Yeah,
fantastic
and
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 yeah.
the whole cultural thing about
Mhm,
the women not having certain, I don't know, rights or certain opportunities
mm,
was again part of putting her in her world,
mm,
because I wanted it to be a non-Western,
mm,
you know, not like cowboys, but non-Western as in like European sort of mindset.
Mm-hmm.
I wanted it to be more of like a Persian, Middle Eastern culture, which
Mm-hmm.
if you look at the traditional Middle Eastern cultures, there is that tension of women not having certain opportunities, and of course
Oh,
nowadays with
yeah.
the Muslim cultures,
Right.
and so I gave her head coverings. I
Yeah.
tried to do a lot of those sort of ideas to try to bring in some of those cultural elements while not putting them down, but just showing
Mm-hmm.
that, because even within those cultures there are strong women and strong women characters, and definitely, you know, the Jewish culture is a Middle Eastern culture, and they
Mm-hmm.
have very strong women in the Bible, and so in you know, in their traditions. So so I just tried to play with some of that and make it
Mm-hmm.
realistic, while also, like you said, giving her something to overcome, right? Giving her something
Right.
to kind of break through and overcome. So no, yeah. I enjoyed it. I'm just happy other people like it. You know how it is when you're an author. You're like, well, I think
Yeah.
this is cool,
I know.
but then it's nice when you hear, people besides my mom who think it's cool.
Absolutely. Well, you've got a fan in me for life,
Thank
I'm
you.
telling you. And I have to know, is there a book two coming out? Are you writing? Are you planning, plotting,
I'm planning. There's definitely a book
scheming?
too.
Good.
I'm more in the brainstorming. I have a basic outline. I need to get the heart of the story.
Mm,
I know the outline. And for me, nowadays, when I'm writing,
mhm,
before I just kind of sit down and write, I need to know the heart of it. Like the
mhm,
heart of Elowen is essentially, what does it mean to be a hero? Like,
mm,
what does it really mean to be a hero? What does it really mean? And of course, and I'm bringing in all these other elements,
mhm,
but it's really, what does it mean to be a hero? And I just
mhm.
take her on that journey, which is why she's questioning herself. She thought she knew what a hero would be because she was listening to her dad and all those old stories, and she
Right.
has she has these heroes of her own faith,
Mhm,
but she's realizing the reality is is different, right? When you actually
mhm,
get into the battles, when you get into having to, how do you know who's right and wrong? How do you know, like when you live in the real world, everybody can seem wrong or everybody can seem right, and how do you
mhm,
kind of navigate some of that? And so that's why it's not an unsurety like she's weak, but it's unsurety like, to me, that she's learning what
mhm,
this world is really about. And I
mhm.
think we can all relate to that. I think we can all relate to having this sort of idealized version of maybe politics at one point, or something
Right.
else, where it's like, oh no, this is the right side. And then you start to see behind the curtain with some things, and you're like,
Mhm,
oh, what's this really about? And
mhm,
so, for the book two, I'm really trying to get to the heart. I know where I'm taking her, and I know the general character growth that she goes through, but I want to boil it down to something real. There's
mhm.
a couple elements that I want to earn. I want to make sure
Okay.
are earned, and I think I did that well with Elowen, and I want with the first book with Shield of the King, and then I want to do that with this one because she's going to be put into a whole different culture now, where it's different.
Right.
Where
Right.
she's going to be taken to a whole other country, and then a different sort of politics and tensions, and um, so just trying to. So she's going to have to navigate some things again,
Mhm,
but I want to just, so for me, it's when I get that core, like, okay, that's what the story's really about, because
mhm.
then you just point every scene to that, you point every moment,
Yeah.
every scene to that,
Mhm.
and then even if the reader doesn't know it, they feel it, I think.
Yeah,
So
I agree. Well, you did a good job with that. In Shield of the King, just questioning what is actually right from what she's been taught her whole life, and then suddenly introducing things that make her question things, and the reader just completely follows along with those discoveries, um I'm just offering, if you need a beta reader for the next one, please think about me.
well, you might see a chapter one in the next couple months show up in the Word
Oh,
Weavers group.
really?
Yeah.
yes, yes. Okay, I want to talk a little bit about Julius because you have introduced him as just somebody. I can't really get a grasp of his character. He's sly and he's not exactly charismatic, but he is in a way. Like you just love this guy. Like he 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 trumps everyone. Like no one can beat him at sword fighting and that's fun in its own right. But just his attitude is like, she's like, we're gonna get into some trouble, and he's like, good. Like, I love that. He's funny. Like you had a sense of humor in him that I really enjoyed, and I was like, I can't wait to see what you're gonna do with her and Julius, and of course, is as the romantic in me, I'm like, maybe there's a little romance that's gonna happen. Maybe, that's definitely something that
Well,
I
that's the
picked up on.
that's yeah, that's the other element that I want to make sure I have right, which is where you can probably help me with,
Mm,
is she is going to have some romance in the second book. I didn't put it in the first book because so much of her struggle was within her family.
yeah.
So much of it was with her family and her family background. And
Mm,
I just thought, like, I almost put, like, I played with the idea of giving her more of a romantic sort of element with that servant guy
yeah, I
that
kind
she,
of picked up on
like,
that.
and I was
Reba.
like, do I want to do that? But I was like, I think that's going to be too much. I think
Too
that's over the,
distracting.
like, too much for what the story is really about. Like that wouldn't
Yeah.
be serving the story to me.
Mm,
Whereas in the second book, it does, and there's room for her to explore some of that now that some of the stuff with her family is somewhat
mm,
settled.
mm-hmm,
And but that's going to come back a little bit too. So
mm,
so
mm-hmm,
there's still going to be some of that, some of her history, her father's history is going to be a little bit more explored in a
mm-hmm,
different way. And just so that's another part of it that I want to make sure that I'm not just, because I don't, I want the, if I put romance in it, I want it to be realistic or,
mm,
again, earned. Like, I'm a
mm,
big believer in earning something as a
mm,
writer. Like, I want to earn. I want the reader to think, oh, I totally get why she would fall for
yeah.
this guy. Why she would,
That's a good way to put it. I like that.
and
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm,
because I think, because I read a lot of YA,
mm,
and the good YA that has the romance in it, they earn it to me.
mm,
Like, but then a lot of times it's a little more cliche, right?
mm,
Oh, they don't like each other, but they're going to get together. We all know. I mean, just sort of one of
yeah.
those.
Mm-hmm,
And I think there's some complexity to that I haven't done since probably my first book. My first book was basically a romance. Like, my first book was a coming of age romance.
wait, you
Um,
talking about
Oh
The
no,
Living
like, I'm
Stone?
talking about when I was like 21. I'm talking about, like,
Ah,
my first book that no one, like, my wife has read, and there's some,
okay.
good friends of mine who read it, but it was more like that 90s
Mm,
um sort of indie coming of age romance sort of
okay.
stuff. I mean, um and anyway, so
Well, that does lead me to my next question. So, how long have you been writing? And when did you start writing fantasy?
okay, so I was writing, started in the second grade,
Ah, wow.
and
Okay.
the legend goes that I was in the second grade, and I was a very mischievous, energetic boy,
Mm-hmm.
and my teacher, Miss Green, sat me in the front of the class because she had to keep an eye on me. And we had a spelling test on Thursday.
Mm-hmm.
And if you got 100 on the spelling test on Thursday, you didn't have to do the retake on Friday.
Okay.
Well, I would get 100 on Thursday and then be sitting there with nothing to do while the rest of the class was taking the retake, the
Yeah.
second, the second. So I would get in trouble. I would, I'm bored and I'm a boy.
Yeah, yeah.
Well, I mean, girls do that too. It's not this shit. I'm a boy. I was just,
No, boys, yeah, no, you're right. Boys are.
well, I mean, I do have a girl that's like that too. So, I mean,
Oh,
I
okay.
have a daughter who you don't want her to be bored, especially when she was that age. So here I was getting in trouble, and this teacher, she was fairly young at the time. She was probably in her late 20s. I mean, obviously, I was a kid, like I didn't really get that, but she looked
Yeah.
at me, and she looked at me on a Friday when everyone else starts taking the test, and she looked at me and she said, "Britt, why don't you write me a story?"
Oh,
And I thought
oh,
that was the best idea I ever heard because I read everything. I read all sorts of
wow.
stories. I read all sorts of books. I had a very high reading level at a very young age, which is why I was getting 100 on the spelling test. And so,
Mm.
I had a fourth or fifth grade reading level in the first grade. Like I was very
Wow.
advanced as a reader. And there was this light bulb moment that was like, wait, I can write the kind of stuff that I'm
Wow.
reading? Like,
Yeah.
wait, I could be that person? And something in my brain went, that's what I want to do. That's what I
Yeah.
want to do. That is who I
Wow.
want to be.
That's cool.
And so from that time on, I was writing stories. I was doing comic books. I'd draw my own comic books.
Hmm.
I would just do all sorts of things. I got more into songwriting when I was 16 or 17, and I put some of the like fiction writing stuff away. And then again, in the mid to late 90s, I started to get back into writing. So writing fiction. So I started writing some urban fantasy sort of stuff, supernatural, modern urban fantasy sort of stuff. And then I got into the Living Stone fantasy around like a lot of people did. When Lord of the Rings came out, I was like, you know, I've rediscovered my love of The Hobbit and Tolkien and a lot of that stuff. And I always loved fantasy, but I started having an idea for a story and everything like that. So
Okay. Okay. So are you a full-time author, podcaster? I know you have a podcast too.
yeah, I have. Yeah, well, I
Well,
have.
you've got a few.
Yeah, I've got a couple, but I have got one is a ministry podcast. I've got a YouTube channel that's more for writing. So great
Okay.
stories change the world. I do, which you're going to be on soon.
Cool.
And are we I don't know if we want to tell people what we're going to talk about. I think we're going to talk about a TV show instead of a movie. You said you wanted to do.
Yeah. Yeah. Uh,
So, and then I have a couple other podcasts that I do. And so
wow.
I am a full-time writer, but some
Okay.
of my writing is like content writing for articles and blogs for different companies. So I get paid to write content. I'm not a full-time author in the sense of I'm making a full-time living on my books. Like that's not
Okay.
happening right now. So, but I am a full-time writer in the sense of I
Hmm.
am making most ends meet with some freelance writing. Yeah.
That's fantastic. So you write like nonfiction, I'm assuming? Nonfiction articles?
Yeah. I write nonfiction articles and blogs. And then I write, content for websites. I do some story consulting with marketing companies.
Hmm.
I'm doing a little bit of that, which I really enjoy how people can leverage the stories. I'm a
Mm.
big believer in story. And so
Hmm.
I want to help nonprofits, small businesses in their marketing kind of leverage the stories of transformation that they already know and talk about, but they don't really put out there in a very effective way. And so I do some consulting with that. And yeah,
Cool.
people pay me to talk about
Yeah.
story and write stuff. And it's pretty
So
cool.
how would someone find you if they want to talk to you about something like that?
I'm the tall, goofy guy. I'm that. That's how. No, as far as my author, go to mbmooney.com. That's my website.
Okay.
And if you want to check out again my YouTube channel, it's on Great Stories Change the World is the YouTube channel, which is
Cool.
again you'll be a guest on there soon. And if you want like TikTok, I'm on TikTok as MB Mooney author. I'm on Instagram as author MB Mooney. I was not smart when I started to set up a lot of these, social media. You're supposed to have all the same handles, and I messed up. I'm on Twitter. I'm on Facebook, so you can check me out on all those things.
So they can, if someone wants help, if they have a small business and they want help with your
Oh,
marketing, they can go to your website and
yeah,
contact
they
you
can go to
there.
my
And
website. I think there's a way to contact me there, or they can just email me at authormbmooney at gmail.com. They can email me there. But yeah, absolutely.
that's,
I get excited about talking about story with people, so it'll be good.
yeah. So tell me about your other projects. I know since we're on Word Weavers together, I know you're working on a Huckleberry Finn fantasy retelling. So
Hmm.
is that something that you have a publisher for, or are
I do
you
not.
looking
I do
around for
not
that?
have one yet. Yeah, I don't have a publisher for that one yet, and that's the other thing I'm trying to get into is middle grades. So I have a couple middle grades novels that I'm trying to get into with publishers, and ultimately I might self-publish something like that. So because I do both, I have traditional publishing and I do self-publishing.
Mhm.
It's just when in the publishing world, it's very competitive right now, and the publishing world is still trying to figure out the publishing world. They're just trying to
Yeah.
figure out what to do without bookstores. Although Barnes and Noble is supposed to be coming back here and
Oh,
there,
okay.
but so right now I have Shield of the King, and I mean, yeah, and I'll do book two. I'll be starting that really soon, and I'm going to be kind of looking for some publishers with a couple middle grades novels. I've got a children's book coming out this year,
Wow. What's the name of that?
called The Mouse Who Couldn't Eat Cheese, and
I love it.
we're just kind of waiting for the artist to be done with her part, and that was just a total left field thing. I never thought I'd write a children's book, and
Wow.
then yeah, and I've got a free story on my YouTube channel. So I've started a new story on YouTube called The Henchman, which is
Okay.
something where I write a chapter every week or two, and I just read it on the YouTube channel.
Oh, and that's on the stories that matter.
Yeah,
The
great stories change the world.
great. Oh, great stories change the world.
Yeah, that's
Okay.
on there.
Okay.
And because I wanted to kind of get back to that, I was doing that with a different podcast a couple of years ago, and I wanted to get back to that. And I've got a novella coming out this year. So Caleb, who you know a little bit about if you've read, I've been doing some novellas about his origin. And so book one is already out. Caleb, book one called The Citadel. And then I've got The Way of the Fist is book two, and that'll be coming out this year as well. So
I
I've
did not
just,
know about the first novella. That's cool. Yeah, because
yeah.
I would definitely be. That's one thing. Like, because a Living Stone has so many characters. I mean, you are in the middle of a chapter and you switch point of views. So like, I'm 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 getting close to being halfway done, but like, it's it's a little you're trying to relate to all of them, and you're trying to connect with all of them. And I feel like there's so much about Caleb that is a mystery. And I know that's probably your intention. So
Hmm.
you did a good job of that. Um, but there's just so many interesting characters in that book. So it's taken me a little longer to read that one just because I'm trying to like soak it all in. And by
Hmm.
the way, how did you learn how to write these fight scenes? I mean, you are so good at that. Like,
Thank you.
have you trained in fighting,
Pete,
boxing, any of that?
you are not the first person to ask me that. I've trained a little bit. I mean, I did a couple years of karate back when I was a kid, but
Mm.
mostly this is gonna be really this is gonna sound really cheesy. Mostly it is watching a lot of martial arts movies
Movies.
and
Oh,
reading some things. I think there's some Dungeons and Dragons, more action adventure books that are more pulp fiction sort of things that have a lot of action in them that I enjoy. So
Mm,
a lot of those things kind of mix together. And but for me, the secret to a good fight scene is the fight has to be a story too.
mm,
Like the secret to a good fight scene is not that there's action, but that there's tension, and then there's reason, and there's
mm,
motivation, and there's goals, and like all the stuff about a good story has to be in the fight scene. And I try to make it as personal as possible while I'm writing it. Like, it's like you haven't gotten to the battle scene at the end, but like in the battle scenes, I don't talk about like these 1,000 people go here and these 1,000 people go here. Like I talk about one person and their experience in the midst of it,
yeah,
and the grittiness and the chaos and the thing and
yeah.
I think that's why people enjoy it, and just kind of make a story out of those moments of
Mhm,
that character. Like, why is this character doing this? And
mhm.
how are they winning or losing? Mostly they're losing. uh, because,
Well, yeah,
so,
you've gotta have something for a reader to root for, you know, like,
yeah, yeah, yeah.
and who, I mean, think of Rocky. I mean, you always go for the underdog. You can't help
Yes.
it. You want
Yep.
them to do it. You want them to
Yep.
overcome all the odds and,
Oh, yeah.
and
And,
just kill it.
yep. Rocky's a great example. Like, if you watch Rocky and you're a writer,
Mm,
pay attention to the fights,
yeah,
that there's drama within the fight. There's
yeah,
dialogue, there's back and forth, there's is he
yeah.
going to make it, is he going to come back, like there's all those sort of elements to it.
Oh, and
And
Apollo, like, you're gonna get back up, really? Like, you
oh
can't
yeah,
even
all
believe it.
that.
It's all so good.
And if you really want to know how to write fight scenes, another great example is
Mhm.
watch wrestling.
Really? Watch like WWE
All
or
good wrestling, I don't
uh-huh.
personally enjoy it, but if you, as a writer, if you watch wrestling, they
Oh,
are telling a story. Good
yeah.
wrestling tells a story,
Oh, yeah.
and it can
Okay.
have some cliches in it, just like anything else. But
Mm,
there's a reason why they've been doing it for 50 or 60 years, and people are
right.
still paying big money to watch it, is
Yeah.
because they get involved in character and motivation and all of that sort of stuff. And
Mhm.
so again, you can know the basic terms of they're going to stab and this and that. You can know the terms, but to me,
Yeah.
what engages a reader is that element of making the fight scene a story in and of itself.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I remember I uh brought to one of our Word Weaver meetings one of my fight scenes, and you gave me some really great advice because you felt like the story within the fight could be better, and it
Mm.
really got me thinking about that and making it more intentional, to bring the story first, not the
Yeah, yeah,
fight.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah, so um that was great advice. Yeah, I have a lot to learn. I have a lot of fight scenes in my stories, elemental battles where they bring in the elements and everything, and that's been a lot of fun to explore. That's been a
yeah,
lot of fun. I definitely have room to grow. So, because there's so much you can do. I mean, you kind
yeah.
of have to pick and choose what their abilities are and frame your world,
Hmm.
kind of uh and build it as you go. You can't just throw in a gift and say, "Here you go, they can do this now," and you have to be able
Yep.
to they kind of have to prove that that's, you know, believable and all the things. I mean, and that's another thing. Like you do really well too. You make fantasy believable, and I absolutely love that when that happens because, I mean, I that's my number one genre. I mean, I write it, but I read it all the time,
Hmm.
and I absolutely love when fantasy comes to life and it's like that could actually happen. Like, if you succeed at doing that as an author, as a fantasy author, I feel like you've done it. You've succeeded. You've accomplished exactly what you should as a My last question is, tell me what's a book that you you really want to write? It's just not the right time. Like hasn't been the
Hmm.
right time, but maybe something that's been on in the back of your mind, or maybe something that you would love to write and just haven't explored it yet. Is there a genre you haven't written yet? Because I know you write fantasy, but
Oh, all the genres.
science fiction
But
maybe? Is that something in your
well,
wheelhouse?
I have two answers to that. First is I've been getting into screenplay writing, and so I want to write a
Cool.
a full movie screenplay.
Okay.
And I have a couple options of that, of what I want to write. So that's next. That's going to come this year, hopefully.
Is that fantasy? Is this a fantasy movie or is
This
this
is going.
like contemporary?
This one is this first one I want to do is sci-fi horror. So
Oh,
it's like horror slash sci-fi, alien invasion meets kind of horror, sort of, uh,
wow.
urban fantasy meets alien invasion. Yeah, that's a good way to put it.
Ah,
And kind of a mashup. It's really fun. I also want to get into lit RPG.
hmm.
It's becoming a very popular genre, and I've read several books in the genre. And I'm trying to think of the kind of story I want to write with it. So that's been something I'm mulling over in my brain. I'm way far away from actually doing it in the sense of, but I think if I can get the idea down, and if I can make it my own, that's probably something I'll try to do this year as well, is write so the screenplay, Elwyn book two, and maybe get started on a lit RPG. That'll happen this year.
Okay, you're
Oh,
gonna have to tell me exactly what is a lit RPG. I don't even know.
that's a great question. So Ready Player One
Okay.
is probably the most popular lit RPG. And basically it is telling a story as if you're going into a video game world.
Ah,
So you're a
okay.
character, your main character is outside of the world,
Okay.
but then that character goes into some sort of video game world and has adventures there. But then obviously, like just like in Ready Player One, there's also some story outside of the video game world that's interconnected, and you but there's all this stuff about video games that people love. I mean, like,
Hmm.
there are YouTube channels that have millions of views
Yeah.
just because they're watching someone else play a video game. So these
Yeah.
are books that basically
Okay.
have dive into that, where the main character goes into a video game world. There's some movies and there's some anime that does it. Sword Art Online is one of the more popular ones. Oh no, what's one that I've seen? So I'm just trying to get through, like, what I want to say. I don't want to do it just to do it. I want to make sure I have a good story, have a good character arc, and good characters, and an
Okay.
interesting sort of spin on it myself. Um, I've also been thinking about a way to write a story. I don't know if I could do a whole book,
Mm.
but I'd like to do a story in second person.
Oh, okay. I
I
don't
think
even
that
know
would
if
be a
I would.
challenge.
That is a challenge. Yeah. So how would that read? Tell me how that would read because I don't think I've ever read a book like that.
I've read a short story with it, so
Okay.
I don't know if it could sustain it through a whole book. Maybe a
Mm.
novella, but it would be, you did this, then you did this, and then you did this, and then you went here, and then you, like, it's all. And I think it would be a real challenge to make it interesting and to tell a real story with a character arc within that.
Hmm.
It's just something I'm playing with. It's like you're saying. I still have things to learn. Like
Yeah.
me doing a YA fantasy with romance in it from the female point of view.
Right.
I've never done that. So
Yeah.
So I try to, with every project I do, I try to challenge myself with something. Um, you know, because like in the Living Stone that you're reading, I basically have two main points of view. I have
Mm-hmm.
two main stories. I've got the Echelon story, and I've
Mm-hmm.
got the Caleb story, and I've got those two sort of storylines that are coming together towards the end. I mean, you can tell they're going to meet up, right? I mean, that's where it's all going. So, but then
So,
in the second book, I wanted to have three. I wanted to have three main storylines.
wow, wow, that's a big job. That's a big job.
So and make it work. And then I mean, I've had people recently tell me they think the second book's better. Like the second book's even better. And I'm like, oh, and that makes me feel good because I'm like, I really challenged myself
Yeah.
to make it readable and enjoyable and still not a page turner maybe, but kind of a page turner, but to make it
Mm-hmm.
more complicated. That makes it more complicated. Like three different storylines makes it anyway. So yeah.
Yeah. So would you consider a Living Stone and the trilogy an epic fantasy? It seems like it is to me.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
no, it's definitely classic epic fantasy with
Yeah.
my own sort of spin on it. I mean, I think I've made it my own in a lot of ways. It's gritty and redemptive, and that's sort of my style. It's both gritty and violent and dark in a lot of ways.
Yeah. Yeah.
And but then there's also a lot of redemption at the same time.
Yeah.
So,
Okay.
but yeah,
Well, I'm looking forward to uh continuing the story and talking to you about it later. That'd be fun. But if you I'm just offering this. If you ever need a brainstorm about Elowen and her story, you can always chat me up and
will do,
I can help you. I can help you with that because that would
will
be a lot of
do.
fun. I definitely love it. It's a
Definitely beta
great
reading would
story.
be fun. Definitely beta reading because when I write it, I'll be like, I don't know if this would a
Yes.
woman believe it. Would a woman believe this?
Okay, I could tell you that. Absolutely. And I'm sure your wife could too. She'd probably is she a
Yes,
reader? Is your wife a reader?
she can be, but during the school year, it's very difficult for her to read. I mean, she's
So
so
she's
busy.
a teacher.
She's a
She's a
teacher.
teacher?
Yeah,
Okay.
she's a high school teacher, and
Oh wow.
we have three of our own kids that are all in high school, and
Oh
so
wow.
it's just my wife. We call her in the summer. We say she's summer mommy because
Uh
she's the kids because she reads and she's she gets to do a lot of stuff that she doesn't normally get to do during the school year. So, but reading is one of those things that she does more over the summer. So yeah.
my husband is not a reader. He likes to read nonfiction is what he prefers to read.
Hmm.
But I'll get him to sit down with a chapter of mine and he'll give me his very open and honest and brutal commentary oftentimes, especially when like I write a kiss scene or something and he's just like, "Okay, you're going a little too far there, honey. What is this?" And I'm like, "Oh, well, really? It's that much?" So he definitely puts me in my place most of the time. So we need that. We need that for sure. As
Hmm.
authors, we need someone to tell us a checks and balance kind of thing.
Oh, absolutely. Well, and that's the beauty of Word Weavers, our group, and
Yes.
getting some feedback. Sometimes you don't know if it's working, right? Because you're so close to it. So it's nice to get some feedback from people who are going to be honest but encouraging. That's good.
Yeah, and I'm definitely going to give a big plug into word weavers. If you are an author, writer, want to have someone look over your stuff and give you an honest and constructive criticism.
Hmm.
That's something word weavers does extremely well. I would
Yep.
highly recommend you
Absolutely.
joining a word weavers group. Go ahead and pay the membership. It's worth it. It's worth it
Yeah.
because you can't do this alone. You
No.
can't. I mean, if you try to, it could blow up in your face because you've not had any feedback on it,
Hmm.
and that's not something you want.
No.
So, I would highly recommend. So, definitely look into it if you're interested in that. But, um, Britt, thank you so much. I so enjoyed our talk today, and thank you for taking the time to sit down with me and talk over your awesome book. And I'm super excited. You've got me hoping that I will be a beta reader because I will definitely. I
Thank
I'm
you.
I'm one of those that leaves lots of comments, and I'll tell you my reactions as I go along. And
Oh, you do. You do a great job in our meetings too. So I believe you. You will. Yeah, yeah. If you've had beta readers, you know how you don't want the beta readers to go, "Oh, it was good."
I
Like you don't want that.
know.
You don't want that beta reader.
That's the word. That's almost an insult. It's almost an insult. I'm like, you have nothing more to say than that. Like,
Like-
then I failed. I absolutely failed. I didn't bring any emotion out in you at all. Like, this is horrible.
Not
This
even
is
I
horrible.
hated it. Not even
I
like
know. I
you'd
never
almost rather like I hate it.
thought it at least gives you some inkling that it brought out something. Like,
Yeah,
this
yeah,
was
yeah.
good. As much as I mean, that happened to me one time, and I was just like, I telling you it was awful.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
yeah, so
Good. I'm glad.
I'm not one of those. So
No, you're not.
well, good luck with everything. Be blessed in your journey,
Thank
and I
you.
can't wait to
Appreciate
see
it.
this chapter 1 you're promising hopefully next month.
Thank you. Thank you.
All right, Britt, have a great day, and I will see you next month for sure.
That's right. We'll see you. All right. God bless.
Or on your podcast whenever you let
On
me know
yeah.
when that's coming up.
Yeah. We'll set it up soon.
Yeah, so my I don't think we mentioned it, but the series that I'm wanting to talk about is Shadow and Bone. So if you are
Hmm.
a Shadow and Bone fan, come on the
Yes.
podcast.
That
And we'll be
awesome.
talking about it. All right, thanks, Britt.
Thanks.